Hi, welcome to those of you who are signed on. We're giving families just a few more minutes, a few more seconds to log in. So bear with us and we'll get started momentarily. All right, well, we do want to be punctual. We know you've got bedtimes probably to attend to and a never-ending to-do list as parents. So we want to go ahead and welcome everyone to this evening's event. This is our Building a Literacy Toolkit Zoom, hosted by the Kaiser Woodland Parent Faculty Organization, also known as the KWPFO or simply PFO. My name is Adrienne. I'm a parent volunteer for communications with the PFO, and I've got two kiddos at Woodland. Real quick, the PFO is, if you're not familiar with us, we're a volunteer nonprofit organization, and we assist both Woodland and Kaiser by helping to further the reach of arts, technology, and enrichment opportunities. We create fundraisers throughout the school year, like our upcoming readathon, and we also provide volunteer planning and support to make these schools the best possible places for our students to learn and grow, which leads us to events like this evening, and we're thrilled to have you all on sign on tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude and appreciation that the land we're sitting on tonight is the traditional land of the Achichiman and Tonga people, both past and present. I want to acknowledge that March is both Women's History Month and also National Reading Month. And just go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. First is that tonight's Zoom is being recorded. We'll later post it to the kwpfo.org website, and we'll also share a link through our weekly Nightline email. We're also offering Spanish interpretation. So if you're interested, you can click the globe on the bottom of your screen if you'd like to access the Spanish translation that will happen live. We also encourage you to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions. You're welcome to use the chat as well, but it's easier for us to go back and forth if you're focused on the Q&A feature. Our wonderful presenters tonight are our Woodland Principal, Dr. Amy Nagy, and Woodland support teachers, Leah Perkins and Holly Hoffman. They're going to talk about building a literacy toolkit for about 20-25 minutes. Following that presentation, we'll open up the floor for Q&A. We did have some questions already submitted. That'll help us get the ball rolling. But please think of those burning questions as the discussion evolves, and we'll be watching the feed to share those and address them. And with no further ado, I will hand it to you, Dr. Nagy.
Great, thank you and welcome. All right, we're going to get right started. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my background and my passion for literacy. So I have been an educator for about 30 years, maybe a little more. I started off as a counselor, and then I was a teacher. I've been a principal for many, many years. But prior to becoming a principal, I was a language arts coordinator in my previous district in Michigan, and had the opportunity to really focus in the area of literacy and build curriculum. I worked at the state level, actually helping to develop the state standards for the state of Michigan, and did a lot of training in the area of literacy. So literacy is a definite passion of mine. And I'm going to turn it over to Leah Perkins, who's going to share a little bit about her experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah Perkins. I have been a support teacher here at Wonderful Woodland for 3 years. And previous to that, I was a preschool teacher for 7 years. I've been in the education field for 14 years, and my minor is in language and literacy, so I too have a passion in that as well. So I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to share some ideas and some support for you.
Hello, I'm Holly, and I've been teaching for about 20 years, mostly at the primary grade levels, K through 3rd. And my most recent experience is here at Woodland Elementary, and I'm very excited to be here.
Great. So we're going to get right started because we have a lot to share with you, but we're excited. We hope that you'll find these ideas. We want to give you a little bit of background information that reading is a science. And then we're hoping to give you some tips that you can implement right away and have some fun around reading. So let's get started. First of all, there are some false theories that you might have heard before. One of those theories, the false theory, is that reading is as natural as speaking. Therefore, immersing children in print and literature will teach children to read. What else is false?
Another
Leah.
false theory is teaching young children to look at pictures, skip over words, or guess at words based on context will develop the strategies necessary for reading comprehension.
And another false strategy, there are hundreds of ways to learn to read. Therefore, there is no single set of instructional principles that will work for all children.
So you may have heard these things, and these are all great ways to support your child as they are learning to read, but there is a science to reading. So we're not going to get into too much detail about the science of reading, but it involves decoding. That is just really figuring out how to take the text that's on a page and decode it. Then you mix that with your language, and that's how you build reading comprehension. And we wanted to share this slide, and we know that on some of your screens, it might look really small. Oh, and while I'm talking about that, we're going to put a link in the chat at the end that's going to give you access to this, because we've got throughout this presentations, all sorts of links that we want you to use as a resource later. But what we want you to take away from this picture is that teaching students how to read is a complicated process. Reading is complicated. First, it's that decoding, which are the areas at the bottom there where it says word recognition, phonological awareness, decoding and sight recognition. And then you take that and you mix it with your language, which is your background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, understanding how language works, verbal reasoning and literacy knowledge. And then all of that woven together, and then you can start to make meaning out of what you're reading. So we're going to talk about those beginning skills that help to build a reader. So the first thing that happens as students are starting to read is they start to recognize print in their environment. And that's that pre-alphabetic reading. They see print, so they see words, but they're really not recognizing the alphabet too much. Then they start to recognize that, oh, that print is words, and of the words, there are some individual letters. And they start to read and write the alphabet. And typically we see them doing that with their name or things that are familiar to them, maybe their brother or their sister's name. Then they know all the letters and they're able to write all of the letters. And then they put it all together and they're able to decode words. So that's the stages of the emerging reader. So they hear things first, and that's the phonemes in language. And so that's all the things that they're hearing. They hear those sounds first. Then they see it, and that is like this letter card up here, the D. They start to see that a D is somehow connected to what I know about D. Duh, duh, duh is what I hear. Then I see it, I match it with the duh. And then I can blend it, and I can maybe spell something like dog by saying dog. And then when I'm able to write it, that's the encoding portion of it. D-O-G spells dog. So, Holly, take it away.
Yes, so early instruction matters, and we're looking at prevention versus intervention. So Leah and I, together with this program, we're here to support the classroom teachers to provide reading instruction that is differentiated for each student, which is a proactive, systematic, and targeted approach to meet students at their individual needs.
And the idea is really that we want to provide this really sound instruction, so later they're not struggling. So our goal is to have them be confident readers by the time they move on to Kaiser. Third grade is kind of that where we're hoping all children will be able to read by third grade. So prevention versus intervention, but of course we'll provide intervention if students are behind.
So there are 5 essential components of reading instruction. There are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Tonight, we'll just be addressing the phonemic awareness, the phonics, and the fluency for you. And we'll also have some ways that you could support your kiddos at home.
Right. And as I said, so this information will all be shared with you so you can go into detail reading some of the things we put in. We put in more text than we would usually do in a PowerPoint, but it's because we want you to have that as a resource later. So first of all, as you support that support your emerging reader. And as I said earlier, that's when they start to notice print around them. Holly, tell them about that.
Okay, environmental print. This is when they begin recognizing print in their environment and they start making those connections.
So your child might say, hey, there's Target. Let's go to Target. Now, why do they notice that? They're starting to recognize that. Or Mom, Dad, stop. There's a stop sign there. Or McDonald's. And so we, as your child is starting to recognize that, Leah's got some fun ways that you can support their learning at home.
So you could take your recyclables, you can make a puzzle, cut them out, make a puzzle out of them. You could make a book out of them. You could also, bingo is always fun and you can use that for any skill. So you can print out several cards, cut one up and draw the cards and practice playing bingo with some of those environmental print that you see around in your neighborhood.
All right. So then, and that typically, is preschool age when they're starting to recognize that environmental print. But we still have kinders that are doing that, so that's okay. Linking letters with pictures. Now, as they're emerging and they're understanding that there are letters that are part of those words, letters are very abstract. What does an A mean? What does a B mean? What does a C? That's why typically, like I said earlier, kids will notice, like they'll say, hey, that's an S, that's for my name, Sam, right? They notice that it's a letter in their name or maybe a sibling's name. So because letters are so abstract, we pair them with things that are less abstract. So if you walk into most primary classrooms, what you're going to see is what we call an alphabet frieze. And that's just a fancy name for a border up at the top of the room where there are letters connected with concrete pictures. And that helps them to learn those letters. And so you'll see that alphabet frieze in the classroom, but you may also see things around the classroom, or you can purchase some things at home, like some flashcards and things like that.
Okay, linking letters and sounds. Once they recognize their letters, then the next step is they start to recognize the sounds that correspond with the letters. And this is an example of how the picture cards, we utilize these pictures to link the letters to the sounds. And so you can see the title at the top. This picture card is batting the ball, and then digging dog, and then huffing horse.
So as Holly was saying, they start to link, like, oh, a B makes a b sound, a D makes a d sound, and an H makes a sound.
Then here we have the other picture cards. These are for short vowels. And as you can see, there's a cat in every picture, and the cat is used for all the vowels. We teach the children, where is the cat? The cat is at the chair. Ah, the cat is at the edge of the chair. The cat is in the chair, on the chair, under the chair.
And the reason why there's a little line after is because for a short vowel sound, there's a consonant that follows. So that's what they learn. And the difference between a long vowel sound and a short. And I should mention the program that one of the programs we use, we of course have our Wonders, which is our main curriculum, but we supplement that with SIPs. So if you've heard of that before, and SIP stands for Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness, Phonics, and sight words. So it's very specific to the fundamental skills of decoding. And so when we get what can you do at home to help support? Well, many of the things that have already been mentioned with environmental print or and then this is to do with the letters and the sounds. In addition, all you have to do is Google letters and sounds, and you're going to find so many free online games or inexpensive online games. So one of the things that we talked about, even as we were talking about learning loss and things like that, and the stress that at-home learning has put on families, we want to stress that there are many ways that you can just have fun with your kids as you're supporting their learning. So we encourage you to make it fun, make it a game. So there's the online games, of course, but then there are things like what Leah was sharing with you earlier with the environmental print. You can do similar things like a bingo with letter cards and the pictures, or a memory match. You know, you put them all down on the ground or all down on the table and you flip them up. Now, the key is we want you to not just have them play that individually, but it's important that they hear it and they see it and they say it. Those are the things we want to do. So when you're playing the game with them and you flip up an A, and maybe it's your turn, you flip up an A, you want to say A, right? We want to connect it. We want that involvement. And then initial sound bingo, you can get outside and play alphabet hopscotch. This beach ball one is fun. And what it is you just put letters all over your beach ball. You throw it to your child and either what lands up or where their thumb is or whatever you want to do. And they have to say the letter. So it's just fun ways to help kids start to recognize those letters. And then here, what you're going to notice when we send this to you with the link, you're going to be able to click on this and it's going to take you to our SIPS flashcards. And so you can do this at home. So it's basically just print it on cardstock is the best way to do it. So it's a little stiffer, and cut it up and you can make flashcards. And now you have, again, that letter that is connected to a picture that helps them with the letter and sound correlation. And then, as we said, fun ways to make the learning stick. When we talked earlier, we said that a lot of times kids recognize the letter in their own name. Kids love to see their themselves, right? So this is Michael, my Michael, and I made this book for him when he was 2. So it's all the pictures that I collected when he was 2 and turned it into a little alphabet book. So here's my alphabet book. I brought it to share with you, and the photo album. And so we just had fun with it, but Michael would sit down and look through, and truth be known, he still sometimes looks through it, and he's going to be 27. So he will be 27 this summer, but this is just a fun way to connect the letter to something that's meaningful. So letters are abstract, words are abstract, and so connecting that to something that makes meaning for your child.
Okay, the next slide is an example of how the SIPS program teaches the sight words.
And we're going to play it for you. So.
The book is in his desk. Read.
The.
Spell.
T-H-E.
Read.
The.
Spell.
T-H-E.
Read.
The.
All right, Holly, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's the routine where they first hear it in context. Then we cue them to read. They read it and spell, and they spell it, and then they read it. So we do it twice: read, spell, read. And then they do the next word. And then here's a reference and a link for the high frequency words from the SIPS program and the Wonders program.
All right, Leah, how do they practice?
Yes, ways to practice. There are so many ways. Here are just a few examples. You can first make flashcards, so that kind of solidifies, and it practices what we practice here at school, that read, spell, read model. Try not to overwhelm them. Maybe start with 5 to 10 sight words to practice. Once they master those, you can move on to 5 to 10 more. Once they build that word bank, you can play a ton of different games. You could play memory, just like what you did with what Dr. Nagy talked about with those letters. You could play memory. You can play bingo, of course. You could play a game called Slapjack we have here. You can take a scavenger hunt through the book you're reading aloud to your child and look for sight words there. The possibilities are endless. Go outside, write the sight words with chalk. We also have on the right-hand side here on this slide, you'll see a little app that says Word Work, and that's an app that you can download as well for that extra practice.
And that one is free. And then hopefully you all know about Lexia and you're busy, you know, allowing your child to work independently to practice those skills with Lexia. All right, so now they know their sounds, they're recognizing letters, they've got the environmental print, and we want to put it all together and they start to read, which is a lot of fun. And that happens sometimes even before they get to Woodland Elementary. But the emergent reader stage is first, and then we move on to early and transitional, extending, intermediate. And this that says Fontes and Pinnell text level characteristics, we're going to go through a few of those with you, but there's a whole list of all the way from A to Z, which takes them all the way through middle school, of what are you recognizing in your child, and the things that they're able to do, and then how do you match the appropriate book to your child. So we want to talk about how it's important that it's not too easy. It's not too hard. A lot of times when I say to the kids, how do you get to become a better reader? And they say, oh, reading hard books. Like, and of course, at this age, they're all, you know, wanting to read the chapter books. So those are the hard books they want to read. But if children are missing too many words as they're reading, it's too hard and they get frustrated and they really aren't becoming a better reader. So hard books don't make them a better reader. Easy books don't make them a better reader. It's the just right book. So there are a few words that they don't know, but they're able to use the skills that we're teaching them, how to sound those out based on their understanding of the letters and the sounds that they make and blending and all of that good stuff. So getting those just right books is so important, making sure that they're matched to the right book. And here, there's also a little thing here. We were meeting with teachers today. Holly, Leah, and I were meeting with the teachers, and one of our teachers shared with us that she likes to think of it as Goldilocks, right? And the just right book. So I found this image. So just like Goldilocks had to find the just right bed, the just right porridge, that's what needs to happen. And then here are some examples. And again, I've got a lot of text, which isn't ideal for a presentation, but I want you to be able to use this later as a reference. So just let's take a look at the pictures. This is a very, this is like a kindergarten level, just emerging reader, maybe even before kindergarten, a book that you would put in front of them. And although we said the false theories are, you know, too many, that children will learn to read books by just using picture clues. Well, obviously that can't be the only strategies, because as we know, some books don't have pictures. They'll need to be dependent on. But here we're helping them to feel like a reader. And a little story that I have is one little girl, and I was talking to mom here at Woodland, and she was really frustrated. She's a first grader and she was struggling. She's like, I can't read. And I said, yes, you can. You just haven't found the right book. And so we found her a just right book, and she said, I'm reading. And she went home and she's all excited. So we'll help match your children with the Just Right book. So as you're talking with your teacher during conference time, make sure that you're asking, what is the Just Right book for my child? So I can be sure and match my child with the right book. So here, very dependent on the picture, and kids are, and there's a pattern, there's few words. Apples are red, 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 red. Strawberries are red, fire trucks are red. And you can see that they can really use the pictures to help support them. And then it gets a grasshopper jumps, a frog jumps. This is a bee book. Wow, right? A rabbit jumps. Wow, a kangaroo jumps, a dolphin jumps. And you see that predictable text. But now C books already, and this is still a kinder level, an emergent level, this little piggy went out shopping. But now it's not this little piggy went, it's this little piggy met. The next one is this little piggy ate, and some popcorn, and more words, less predictable, still picture clues to help support them. And then here is a D book, so continuing to progress on, and you see even some quotation marks and different types of punctuation. So the books continue to progress. And then we get to our early readers, and Holly's going to talk to you about what this early reader might look like.
Okay, so characteristics of texts at level E. More text is on the page, so it's not as predictable. It's a little more challenging and requires a combination of decoding and sight word recognition. And the pictures are less supportive of the text at this reading level.
And then they become transitional readers, and wow, now we have an H, and they're, like, again, we've got quotation marks, question marks. You see a lot more text on the page. And like Holly said, with our last book that we shared with you, there's the pictures. It's harder to get the words based on the pictures, but still pictures providing some clues. All right, Leah is going to talk to you about, now that they are reading these books, what is fluency and how can you practice that at home?
So sometimes people think that fluency is just all about that speed, and you've got that thoughtful child that still needs that extra time. Well, we look at accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. Accuracy, can they read the words on the page? If they can't read maybe 5 or more, this might be too challenging of a text for your child. Automaticity, at this point, you should not be decoding so many words anymore. Your child should be recognizing these words and recognizing the sight words as well, and just being able to read more automatically. And then prosody, being able to read with expression. We talk about don't read like a robot, read with smoothness, the pacing. We work on the pacing, and of course, stopping at those periods, pausing at those commas. So that is all fluency, not just that speed in there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Holly.
So for example, just, to continue with the fluency, again, it's not about speed, but fluency incorporates accuracy and expression, phrasing, pacing, and even them showing that they know the meaning of what they are reading. And so one way you can do it is you start the timer and you say, okay, right now we are going to just only be working on our expression. Right? So what are we working on? Just expression. We're not reading this for speed. We're focusing mainly on expression, stopping and pausing at the periods and the commas and seeing the quotation marks. And then the same thing with, okay, now we're going to run through it with accuracy. And so you do it in different ways to focus the different elements of fluency.
And there are all sorts of resources. Again, on the internet, all you have to do is Google and you say 1 minute fluency, and you'll find all sorts of passages that, and they're typically, they'll be by grade level, and you can experiment with those. But it's something really quick at home that you can do. It's just 1 minute. Hey, let's try our 1 minute fluency today and see how you're doing to practice that reading. Again, for all of those things, not just speed. We don't want speed readers that then lose comprehension. And in our SIPS programs, we have these decodable stories and books. So if your child is working in SIPS in both the beginning and the extension levels, we have some stories that we might send home, and then resources. Then again, this is going to be something you can click on to see these resources. But Leah's going to explain how we use these here at school and how you can support at home if you get a story like this that comes home.
So like Amy just mentioned, we have these leveled stories, and they build on one another. If you see the underline there on the story on the left side, well, both stories, but I'm looking at the one on the left there, the big pig. Now you see some of those words that are underlined. Those are the sight words we talked about that they just want to read, spell, read, and just know, because we can't always sound them out. The words that are not underlined are those decodable words that we need to practice sounding out so we can gain that automaticity and that fluency. And like Amy did mention, we do have those links for you, so you could have those stories. You might see them come home with your child, or you might see them posted on Seesaw as well.
So as you can see, here is they're all underlined. So we would expect the child to just read that, not sound it out. Here is now big is not underlined, so they can sound that out. Here is a big, pig. That's not underlined, so they can sound it out. He likes to do should be just fluent. So we want them to just read that through without sounding it out. So we've shared with you all those things, but I just wanted to bombard you with a lot of photos about what it means to really, what we want you to do with your child is just help to build that joy of reading. So when I have parents who are calling and they're frustrated, the parent's frustrated, the kid is frustrated, nobody wants to read, everybody hates reading. It's it's stressful at home. We want to maintain your relationship. And one great way to do that is to bond over a book. And so you see the one little girl with all sorts of books. So she's doing it independently, but notice that we've got the little cat. So we encourage kids, hey, read to your pets, right? They're good listeners. And then also cuddling up. One of the things in reading that we're not able to do here at school, right, is to have that. And there's something, that joy that sitting down and reading with your child, even late into, I remember a time where I was studying Shakespeare, and a friend of mine, we were trying to study, and my mom was sitting in her chair, and she said, all right, you two, we're high school, come over here, come at my feet, and I'll read to you. And it's just a really fond memory of even high school love being read to. And so the other thing that we wanted to, you've got the actual animal, but your stuffed animals are great to read with too. So read to your stuffed animals, and especially when we're practicing reading, we want that familiar rereading, and then reading with your child. And Leah mentioned earlier, some of the activities when you're studying, when you're looking at the sight words, you've just read a story. Hey, let's go on a scavenger hunt with our story and see if we can find the. How many times can we count the in this story? How many times can we count whatever? And it's just kind of a fun activity to study sight words, but in a fun way. And then I just recommend just enjoying a good book. Don't stop too often, because that interrupts comprehension, and just read through the story. And you can always revisit, like, oh, let's read through and then let's come back and look at that one page. Oh, I was so excited about that. And then notice too that it's not just moms reading to their children, but also the importance of dads. And then that bottom picture is make it a family event, right? It doesn't have to be reading just to one child. Read to, make it like a little family thing. And then here we have something special that Adrian has done with the foundation. And Adrian, I don't know if you want to take this on, but I'm so excited that she was able to find this, and it's a free resource for us. And it's an app that you can have, that not just cuddling up with someone at home, but connecting with someone far away. You want to talk about it, Adrian?
Sure. So for any of you who were at the beginning of the pandemic shutdown, sort of desperate for ways for your children to connect and stay occupied, you might have been like me and found Caribou. We reached out to them as part of National Reading Month and our upcoming readathon, and they have graciously offered to give all of our Kaiser and Woodland students a free 30 days access to the tool. What Caribou is, it gives you access, probably many of your classrooms use Epic, where your student can either read to themselves or read to you. Caribou is very similar, even the interface looks very much the same. But what's wonderful about this is it actually integrates your video chat. So if you can imagine FaceTiming with grandma, grandpa, or Uncle Bob, and having a book and having those two together in one screen, that's what Caribou does. So for example, my student will pull up the tablet, she'll pick a book that she wants to read, and then she'll push the button and she'll call Nona and say, Nona, can you read me this book? And both of them see the book and each other, and it's just a really wonderful way to connect. My kindergartner and my preschooler, when they use it, sometimes they just do tic-tac-toe. Sometimes they play games in the interface like connect the dots and coloring, but it's very interactive, great opportunities to read and explore new books. There are bilingual books in the Caribou interface, a lot of diversity and a lot of range for various interests from Barbie to, what have you. So we do hope that you enjoy it. I will just add really quick that the code to access the free 30 days is only to be used by Woodland and Kaiser. Your aunts and uncles and family members, all they need to do is sign on with a free membership, and they can accept your students' calls. We want to make sure that our students all have the ability to use that code and it doesn't get taken out from under another student.
And so, yeah, what a great way. And then the more that we show our love of reading, and if you don't love reading, just fake it, right? So that your kids see the joy of reading. But then other adults, their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, their friends, all of those people, it's important. Jim Trelease is an author that he wrote the handbook of the read aloud and just has so many great tips about how parents can help support their readers at home. And he has all these free brochures. So this is just one example. And I think I did the 30 do's to remember when reading aloud. And it just gives you some ideas of what to do when you're reading out loud with your child. And again, that resource is linked. And then other ways to monitor comprehension, as Leah said at the beginning, we're not really focused on comprehension tonight. That'll be a whole nother session, and we look forward to sharing that with you. But good readers do certain things to help to make meaning out of the words that they're reading. They're doing things before they read, while they read, and then after they read. And so here's just a little, and what this is just a little bookmark that I made that you can just keep inside a book that you're reading to remind you of the ways that you can help your child with comprehension. And then people always ask, how my child doesn't like to read, how do I help them become a better reader? So here are the top 10 things to do to help your child become a better reader. Number 1, read. Number 2, read. Number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Read, and then read some more. So we hope, and then a great opportunity to work together as a family. And the reason why we chose to do this right now is as a kickoff. One, you've got conferences next week. So talk to your teacher about matching your child to the right book. What levels should you be having your child read? Of course, you can read them anything. You can read them easy books, the hard books, and they'll enjoy all of that. But for them and their practice, where should they be? And then we have our Reading is My Passport readathon put on the foundation by our wonderful PFO. Finding out more, you can click here to find out more, and maybe they'll mention it at the end. So now we just wanted to take questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy, Holly, and Leah, for that excellent presentation. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Middleton. I'm your Woodland PFO president. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I will be the question wrangler. So Amy, Holly, and Leah, we've got some excellent questions to go through. Let me kick it off with this first one. What are the best ways to help readers stop guessing or predicting words based on the first letter or first couple of letters of a word and focus on the whole word through the very end of the word? So for example, if the word is word, the child might read it as world because they're looking at it too quickly. Any tips?
And I would say that it's definitely an emerging skill. So it's not unusual for the child to look at the beginning. And so it's just, and then after they read that sentence saying, did that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that, you know, what could that be? Or sometimes the child will look at the picture and they won't even look at the word, but they look at the picture. And maybe I was reading with a child the other day and it was, there were different things in the bathtub, like a duck in the bathtub and a different thing. And when the child was reading it, they said bath instead of tub, but then going back and say, let's look at that word. And so just helping them and working through it. But again, as they're emerging, it's just making it positive. You don't want to do it too often either. And if the child is missing lots of words in the story, it's just too hard. So the 5-finger rule with 100 words. So oddly enough, 95% accuracy is what we need when children are reading independently. And just below that when they're getting help from you. Anything you guys want to add to that, Holly or Leah?
I think you can prompt them, look at all the letters, and rereading is so powerful. Just to read and reread, and that practice helps a lot.
In the SIPS program, just to add to that, Holly, the SIPS program, we focus a lot with, you know, okay, let's sound out this word. Okay, we've sounded out. Now let's go back to the beginning of the sentence and read the whole sentence. So that's all good practices.
Okay, let's move on to another question. This question is from a parent of a 2nd grader. And she writes, my child is in 2nd grade and sometimes still skips larger words instead of sounding them out. Any advice?
Yeah, and my guess is that's where and some of the work that we're doing with teachers is just talking about the importance of teaching all the way through our SIPS program. So sometimes what happens, especially when kids have been exposed to a lot of reading, they've been read to, they're exposed to a lot of words, they haven't learned those phonics skills. They've just memorized a lot of words. And then when they get to those more difficult words, they don't have the strategies to break down those larger words. And so definitely have a conversation with the teacher, but that's where teaching them the strategies of breaking down a larger word, those multisyllabic words into, and we've got a whole way that we're teaching them how to break them down, like based on where the consonants are and things like that. And that's part of our challenge program. And we're looking to really make our tier 1 level strong so that the kids have those skills as they're going up to Kaiser.
Okay, thank you. Here comes the next question. How much individualized fluency testing and comprehension testing are teachers and support teachers able to conduct this year? It's very hard to gauge where students are this year, and this is from a parent who used to teach.
That's probably one I should take too. I was going to let Holly or Leah field this one. But the great thing is that we do have our differentiated reading block, and we're looking to expand that into kindergarten. But right now it's in 1st and 2nd grade. So there's 30 minutes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, differentiated reading. And what is happening is our support staff is helping to break down those groups into even smaller groups. So that really gives an opportunity for teachers, whether it be Leah or Holly or the classroom teacher. So let's say that Leah and Holly are let's say Leah, for example, Leah's working with a teacher in a classroom and she takes 2 of the students. Well, if there were only 8 in the cohort to begin with, or 10, and she takes 2, now the teacher has even less students in there. And that's the idea, that everybody's working on reading skills. So the teacher has that opportunity. And in a typical year, you've got 24 students in a classroom. And so now with our differentiated reading block plus, only a cohort at a time, we actually really do have small class size, and we're able to hear kids more often actually reading.
Okay, I'm going to pull a question from the chat next.
All right.
And that is, are teachers, support staff giving running records for the kids to determine reading level for Founts and Pinnell, or is it just AR level?
So the chart that I shared back at the beginning really shows how AR and Fountas and Pinnell, whatever leveling system. So a running record, for those in the room that might not know what a running record is kind of like what we shared with you with that fluency, where you have the words on the page and you have a child read the words on a page and you're looking to see what their accuracy is, for one. And you're determining how many words were they able to read, how many words did they miss as they were going through that in that minute of time. And so we do a combination. So our Acadians assessment that we just finished looks at that type of assessment. And then we have, as students are learning and more secure in their reading, then they are reading or taking the STAR test, which is the Renaissance learning that's tied to AR. So we use both. It's really just poor Leah and Holly, I'm noticing they're here too late and their lights keep going out.
That's me, sorry. Can't figure that one out. I'll troubleshoot later. Sorry about that.
So I hope that answered the question. If somebody wanted to expand on that, Leah, Holly, you want to add anything more to that?
I know that we use the SIP stories and listen to the children read and kind of use that as a running record as well, and make notes to kind of drive our instruction for the next lesson. And then we also give mastery tests every 10 lessons. So we have our own separate data we're collecting on top of the teacher data, and then we meet to discuss student goals.
Okay, here comes another question for you. I have 3 kids at different ages, so story time can't be one-on-one anymore. What suggestions do you have to keep story time interesting for everyone?
I have some ideas. The older, child can make up a story or write a story, and then they love to read their own writing. So writing is also another component that to integrate, and storytelling, drama and acting and playing, and they could all have different roles. So if you found like a little play, that can be fun.
I think as you read with children too, I mean, I enjoy a good picture book, right? And there are so many things that if you find a really good piece of a really good picture book, and look for those award-winning books. But when you find a good book, everyone can enjoy it, and you can have a lot of rich conversation around it. And one of the things, and I believe Trelise mentions this in some of his work too, when we are reading to our children, we're typically using vocabulary that isn't in their natural language, even in just a picture book. And so you're coming across words and exposing kids to words that will help to build their vocabulary, and you can have discussions around meaning. And so I think back to the picture that I shared with you just a few minutes ago, where everybody's cuddled up together and you're reading a story. And so don't worry that they're at different levels. You're reading to them and they'll all take something from that. And most importantly, hopefully they'll be taking that love of reading, and it'll be fun for you, a parent of 3 who's trying to differentiate everything. It's fun to do things together that way, make it less stressful for you. And then maybe give them an opportunity to share read. So those that can read could actually, why don't you take a page or a sentence, or sometimes it's like you stop, like I was reading a book that had a lot of rhyming just recently in a classroom, and I stop and I say, what do you think the word's going to be? Right. And so they can guess what the next word is going to be, anticipate it. And so that can be fun too.
Okay, here comes another one at you. What do you do if a child adds words into a book that they're reading?
Leah, you want to take that one?
Yep. No, that's fine. I would go back and, does it make sense? Go back and reread the sentence. You don't want to put that negative pressure and always bombard them, but always go back and reread. That's a wonderful strategy. And when you work on that fluency practice, like the Minute Fluency that Holly was speaking about earlier, that's also a good time to work on that skill as well, not adding words, deleting words, because that's a common thing that kids can do while they're reading.
You reminded me of another game, if you will, but reading it incorrectly and then they correct you. So if you come up with some just words like the character, you just throw out SpongeBob and it's not SpongeBob, it's the other character that so you throw out these little twists and turns, and then they love to correct you, and it's unpredictable. They don't know what you're going to come up with next. The other thing that's fun is voices, all those animated voices that they hear on the TV, coming up with ways to read it. Okay, let's read it like a big, a big gorilla, and then let's read it like a little teeny tiny mouse. So like all the voices and animation that you can provide is highly engaging. I mean, we all know what kids are like, right?
And I would say too that a couple of things that come to mind when that starts happening is, are we putting too much pressure on children to read quickly versus accuracy? So accuracy is important. And then sometimes we just accidentally it doesn't impact the meaning by adding an extra word, and it's not that often, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. If it is impacting meaning, then that's more serious. And again, thinking about accuracy versus speed. Let's slow it down a little bit so that we're reading it accurately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got a technical question for you regarding AR.
Okay.
I think it'll be pretty easy.
Okay.
Do students earn fewer AR points if they take a quiz on a book that is read to them versus if the student reads the book him or herself?
And it depends on how the teacher sets it up. So it just depends on what the teacher has set it up for, and so it doesn't have to be a different point value, and but of course it depends on the age too, in the beginning and just their development in reading. So if they're excited about earning the points and they need a little bit of support, and they're getting online and they're taking those quizzes after listening to a story, that's good stuff, right? But they do need practice reading as well. And so it's a balance, and it depends, like I said, on the age level too.
Okay. I know we're winding down here. I think we've got time probably for a couple more questions. So another one from Q&A. This goes back to speed and fluency that we were just talking about. When assessing fluency, how much would you weigh speed versus accuracy? I've had a very hard time with my first grader because she works very slowly and isn't concerned with moving quickly through anything, including reading, which is actually a good quality to have, except when assessing fluency and taking timed tests. So what would you advise this parent And another part of this question is, will we be seeing fluency test results on this next report card period, so we know whether or not we need to be concerned?
And it depends on the age level of what, depending on if they're a first or a second grade, we start to measure that fluency. Is it impacting meaning? Because if the student is reading too slow, that can also impact comprehension and making meaning. If I'm taking forever to read, that's going to mess up my comprehension, just like if I read too fast. And the other thing that I would say is, what is slowing that reader down? Is it because they're trying to sound out every single word? If I have to sound out every single word on the page, that's going to slow me down. And so maybe it's not the right book. And so matching the right book. When we do benchmark assessments, then we're looking at a first grade and we're measuring first graders. Of course, we're going to give them a first grade benchmark assessment. But those are all questions to ask the teacher or call me, and I'm happy to walk through that and support. But you do, and eventually we want them to be able to read and at a rate similar to the way that we talk.
Okay.
Oh, one more tip for that though, because I just had this conversation with a teacher. And they were saying, I feel like this child does a lot better, except when they read out loud, they're really slow. And so another tip is sometimes kids just don't read out loud very fast. And so we need to be able to hear what they're doing as a reader. But what I suggested to this teacher is, why don't you put the passage in front of them and say, let me know when you're done. Go ahead and read this passage. Let me know what you're done. And then let's talk about what you read. And that way it's not as pressure or whatever, it might slow them down. And those familiar rereads will help build that fluency. So back to the sheet that we shared, and we're going to share that in the chat in a few minutes, that link. When, read it through several times. We don't want them to just read through that one time, but read it on Monday, read it on Tuesday, read it on Wednesday. That's what practice helps with that fluency.
Okay, and I lied. We got 2 more questions in, so let's see if we can answer these rapid fire and close in the next few minutes. First question, should parents try to guide which books their child reads, or should they just encourage any kind of reading?
All right, Holly, take that. What do you think?
Well, I think that I love that example of the Goldilocks method, that there is a fit. There's a book that's just right. And so I would encourage to find that good fit book. So I think it is helpful to guide them and encourage them. Also, they have their interests. So a highly engaging book. My daughter, for example, loved nonfiction. She always liked informational text. And so she learned a ton from that. So I think that they are going to have their preferences, and that's fine to encourage as well.
Okay, and last question here. How do you motivate the second graders to write what they read about?
Ooh, go ahead, Holly.
I was thinking about what Amy was telling us. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Share.
Oh no, remember, Amy, you need to tell about writing.
Talk. You talk.
Okay. Well, she did this whole lesson on writing and describing a place. I can't reiterate how you did it.
Okay.
Dr.
Sometimes what I was telling Holly and Leah the other day, and I love to talk about all of this stuff because we could do a whole thing around writing too, but sometimes when we ask children to write in a sequential way, then that becomes a block for them. So sometimes it's not starting at the beginning, but it's mapping something out and having some ideas down on paper first, and then being able to put it into something more sequential. So sometimes it's just getting our thoughts down randomly and then putting it together. That sometimes helps. Talking about it first with somebody. So just tell me, what would you say? and then, okay, I can help you. And then it's just helping to guide them, just like we do with our reading.
I had one thing to add to that. I was reading for Read Across America this week, which was so fun to get into the classroom. Holly and I had the opportunity to go to several classrooms and read, and we just enjoyed it so very much. But one class in particular, I said, you know, I don't have time to read 2 stories, so I'm going to go ahead and read you one. But I want to leave this one with you. And it was Ada Twist Scientist, and because they're doing a STEM lesson. And I said, you know what, I think you should write a review. And it was a 2nd grade class. I said, I think you should write a review and tell me if you liked the book. Tell me. And they said, we could do that. And I said, yeah, you could give it 1 star. You could give it 5 stars. Just tell me how you feel. And I'll come back in a week and you share your writing with me. And they said, oh, okay. So just different ways that to incorporate writing is always engaging as well. But that was just one that I had to share with you guys. So
Writing for a purpose.
right.
All right, and I know we're wrapping up, but I put the link in the chat. So supporting your child's learning at home, you'll have access to all of this information. And we're having so much fun meeting with you guys. We are going to do something in April around Coach Wooden's Pyramid of Success. In May, we're going to do something with math and how to support your child's learning at home in the area of math. And then we'll do something in June to launch into summer. But we hope what you took away today was that we didn't talk once about a worksheet. We didn't talk once about, you know, drill and kill, right? We are hopefully inspired you to make that reading practice at home fun. And special thanks to Sarah for encouraging us and organizing all of this, and Adrian, especially for all the work she's doing around the readathon, and then Sonia for awesome job again. I told her she's becoming a regular. She's learning all about Woodland Elementary. And then of course, Leah and Holly. So thank you, everyone.
And I'll help us sign off on behalf of PFO, on behalf of parents. I just want to thank you, Dr. Nagy, Holly, and Leah. Let's also recognize, if you notice their backgrounds, parents, they're all still at school. They've had a long day. And so we thank you for your efforts with their children, your efforts educating us as parents as we are helping to carry the load through this distance learning. So thank you, parents, for joining in. Thank you, Woodland faculty, for providing this. I think everyone who joined in tonight is probably watching either social media or watching their Nightline or Dr. Nagy's emails. So keep your eyes tuned to the information we'll have coming out about our readathon. We'll be trickling out some little things, like we wanted to release Caribou earlier, but our readathon officially kicks off March 15th, right after conference week is done. It's not only a fundraiser that will help continue to support technology and arts and programs in the school, but it's also just an opportunity for us as families to really just immerse in the love of reading with our kids. So thank you for joining. We will be sending out the link to pass along to those who have missed it this evening. But thank you all. Good night.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.